Yeah, so Deanna Zhang, I think about folk all the time and how we can solve the problems around folk. A lot of people tell me it's an unsolvable problem, but I'm not convinced yet. Um, we have an interesting panel today on manufacturing, which I think I would consider a subset of folk. A lot of times we kind of equate folk with manufacturing, but there's a lot of folk out there that relates more to asset deployment, and what we're talking about today is the production of materials and the production of solid products. So just to clarify things there. Um, why do we talk about this? There's a lot of dialogue around America first, around making sure to reshore manufacturing from overseas into the U.S. The reason why this is such an important topic right now is we're realizing how fragile our supply chains are when we don't manufacture domestically and we don't have the capability to manufacture domestically. And we need to relearn that. A lot of the manufacturing has been moved overseas, and a lot of our talent has been focused on areas other than manufacturing, other than the hard asset skills that we need to actually build out a robust manufacturing ecosystem. And so we're coming to terms with that now, and we're coming to the point where we're going to have to put assets in the ground pretty quickly. And so we are lucky to have three panelists here that are doing this right here, right now, and we're going to learn from them about how to do manufacturing right, and especially manufacturing that is tech enabled and that is first of a kind. So with that, I'll let everybody introduce themselves and how they're approaching this topic and where they come from.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Lorene Merway. I am the founder and CEO of Hertha Metals. We are the leading disruptor in steel technology innovation and making metals in a way that's both cheaper and cleaner than the incumbent process. In terms of first of a kind manufacturing, we have been demonstrating the world's largest single step steelmaking process actually up in Conroe. This is at a tonnage per day scale, a continuous pilot plant system, and very excited that in 2 months we're going to break ground on a 10,000 ton per year plant also in Conroe, and we'll be announcing shortly a successful fundraise for that. So we learned a lot during the initial trials with our first pilot plant. We learned how to execute very quickly, very capital efficiently, and the flexibility and knowing what levers to pull when you're first running your technology at that scale. And we look forward to learning more as we scale up and learning more from the other panelists.
Awesome. Thanks, Lauren. My name's Jay Vaitha. I'm the VP of Business Development at Medox. We are a Houston, Texas-based manufacturer of high-temperature superconducting wire, or HTS. It is an advanced conductor technology that can carry about 250 times the current of conventional copper wire. We've got two main markets that we sell this material into. The first is high field magnets for things like our friends in the nuclear fusion industry who are trying to contain plasma using magnetic fields. They require this material in order to build those machines. And then the second is in transmission and distribution of electric power. Think about things like the grid, and then increasingly for data centers and interconnecting large loads, and then delivering power around data center campuses and to AI racks that are now approaching 1 megawatt per rack. So that's the power of a city in the size of a refrigerator. It's going to take new types of materials like what we manufacture in order to deliver those. Our technology is a real Texas success story. A Nobel Prize was won in the late 80s for the discovery of the material that we manufacture. And we are manufacturing here in Houston right now to this day.
I should have gone first because that's just impressive to follow. I mean, I don't know what to do. My name's Will Ewing. I work for Halliburton, leading in business called Naviscale, where we're helping startups scale up their manufacturing and supply chain services. And essentially, what we tried to do with Naviscale, and we've been trying it for about the last 2.5 to 3 years, is we figured out that there's a problem for startups that you guys are struggling to figure out how to approach it. When you do figure out how to approach it, how do you connect with the right vendors and suppliers? And then how do you do this without having to hire an organization of 300, 500, 1,000 people to be able to execute it, right? And so what we figured out is we have 100 years of manufacturing experience. We have Halliburton Labs, which is a accelerator, which helps clean tech startups. So we have experience in that ecosystem. Why can't we try to offer our services and our expertise to startups to help them try to figure out the approach and the shortcuts and maybe some of the skill sets that they require to be successful in their scale up journey. And so it's interesting because it's a first of a kind. I think we're trying to do too, because I don't think you hear of too many companies trying to do this. And so we've had our lessons learned on how hard it's been and just the differences in how to do it with a startup versus how to do it with a 100-year-old company that has an established supply chain. So I mean, I'm excited to share the experiences with this panel because I'm super impressed with all three of them. So I'm excited to hear their stories as we go too.
Awesome. Yeah. So I guess to start off with, this process of going from pilot to commercial line, pilot line to commercial line, I think the biggest issue is always in the fact that founders don't adequately prepare the business plan and understand the economics of what the commercial project actually looks like and whether it's investable. But I'm curious to hear from all of you what you think the biggest friction points are or have been in your experiences between going from the pilot manufacturing line to the commercial manufacturing line, and where if you had to give advice to founders in the room today, where you would say the biggest I wish I knew that back then points would be.
I'll go first. So a couple things. It takes a while sometimes to go from the first pilots to your first of a kind commercial facility. We've operated a pilot line here in Houston since 2010, 2012, around then, and opened our first commercial facility in 2024. So it did take quite a while to prove out the manufacturing process and the technology. I think the other half of the equation, though, is listen to your customers. Listen to the demand and the scale and the size that they need, and build your business plan according to what they need at the time. If you think about the markets that we were talking about, fusion was still 30 years away in 2010. I'm glad to say that we've accelerated that timeline, and load on the grid was flat. AI data centers were not a thing. And so there wasn't a huge need for tremendous volume. And so operating a very small pilot line was sufficient at those times. Flash forward another 15 years and all of a sudden, we can't scale fast enough. And we've now announced our plans to build our second facility, 5x scale up of what we have here in Houston, in North Carolina, starting next year. And so it's really about staging that with the maturity of your technology, and then also with the customer demand that you have in the business plan.
And I will bring another perspective on the question. I think that you answered that one very well. I would approach this question and just the lessons from first, what do you need to do at the pilot plant scale before you start tackling the next scale? So one thing that I'd love to share that, many times investors will push you to go straight to an EPC for your pilot plant. Say work with an EPC, they'll, help you guarantee reliability, et cetera. But working with an EPC at a very subscale plant is very capital intensive, right? And at a pilot plant scale, this is the first time you're really showing your technology in a semi-integrated fashion. It's very important to be capital efficient, to make sure you're not burning too much cash while you're still just in a very heavy learning phase. And so highly recommend that first pilot plant, you do not rely on an EPC. Do rely on different, firms, engineering firms to provide that support, but ultimately take it in your hands and to realize that the pilot plant is made to run fast, run hard, break. It's okay. Now, there's a difference when you move from the pilot plant to your commercial or demo, whatever it is. You can no longer afford to run hard, break things, run campaigns, mess up. Now you need to really optimize for that production that is consistent and meets customer specification, right? And so for our commercial plant, we are now working with EPCs to provide that reliability. But then the customer specification piece is so important for your commercial contracts for you to secure early on. So one thing that I wish we had done differently was our commercial plant does two things. One, it serves as an additional demonstration point for steel, right? This is a 10,000 ton per year plant. A steel mill makes 500,000 to 2 million tons per year, right? Not 10,000. So very subscale. There's no world in which we would be able to compete on a commodity price point at that scale. But we aren't in the climate tech 2.0 phase where people are just throwing money at plants that'll burn cash, right? And so we said, what is a product we can make along the same pathway? We don't need to change our technology, but does sell at that high point. And that's often very small niche markets. And so we had identified that. And I just wish that when we identified that, we immediately went much harder into understanding the customer specifications, the ISO certifications, all of these things that do take time, that are separate from the technology, but critical to the business. So long story short, engage fast and hard with customers, even if you want to keep your head down and focus on the tech, which is what I liked to do.
William, anything to add?
No, awesome answers. I think I'll take it from a different perspective. Both of them have very capital intensive businesses that are required because of what they're trying to offer. I think what we deal with when we deal with the hard tech companies that we deal with, they're not capital intensive. They don't need to be capital intensive, but for some reason, founders get this idea they want to do everything themselves. And so what we try to talk to them about is take a step back and tell me what your core identity is. What's your differentiator? What do you absolutely have to control that makes this successful and not successful? And what can we let other people help you with, i.e. source, vendors, suppliers, et cetera? Because so many startups we talk to try to get into commodity development or try to do things on their own or try to spec things that they're not experts at. Our question is, why aren't you talking to the experts? Why aren't you relying on good suppliers? Why aren't you relying on good vendors, et cetera? And so a lot of what they said, cash is king for you guys when you start. So if you have to be capital intensive, be smart about it. And the other thing I love what they said, and I completely believe in this, not all money is good money, guys. We've seen so many of our customers come to us and have an investor push them in a direction that basically almost ruined them, right? And we've seen so many companies come to us and say they had a $50 million round, but they've burned through it. And the answer is with nothing, right? And so to me, it's be very smart with your cash and also just know what you want to be and focus on that. A couple of the founders came up here and I was super excited to hear their answer when they said, hey, why don't you guys get into this, get into that? And they said, hey, look, that can absolutely be a future state, but we had to be successful. We have to minimize what our focus is and we have to make sure we're very focused on it. And the other thing I love that Lorraine said was, but you got to know when to pivot. You can't be so stubborn with your technology and say it's meant for this and this only, that when a good opportunity comes around, that can be an opportunity that's actually easier, more efficient, better cost effective, that you're not ready to shift to it if it's the right thing to do with your solution. So don't have so much passion that you're blind to being able to see that there are other ways to implement your solution and go for it, because that's oftentimes what inventions are out, right? Not everything was invented for the purpose we use it for today. Don't be afraid to shift. It's not a failure. It's a success when you do that.
I think that we have a very nice synergy here. Agree with everything you said. I want to also emphasize that the United States, when we talk about reindustrialization, onshoring of manufacturing, we offshored it because we got lazy. It's cheaper to do it elsewhere. It's hard. And we have had this push to onshore, but I want to just emphasize how important it is for startups and corporates partnering with startups and investors investing in these startups to be responsible with what you're trying to build. Manufacturing is hard. There are too many burns on this space, whether it's steel, aluminum, magnets, all of it, for us to continue to make, whether it's irresponsible investment decisions or irresponsible direction of where to spend the capital. And so capital efficiency is the name of the game if you're building a startup that does have to at some point raise that $1 billion in capital to build a plant.
And one last thing to add, and I'm maybe the only person that considers this, human investment is capital to me. So to me, when you're building your teams, I've seen so many founders only focus on technology and the smartest people in the room, and none of them had a clue about supply chain or sourcing or anything. And so you're asking this super genius who knows how to design things to now go on Google and try to find the right vendors, and they don't have the right skill sets. And I'm not saying they can't learn it, but it takes special people to be able to do that successfully. I can't do it. I have teams that do it, and they do it way better. One of my colleagues, Nick Webster, back there, he can find a solution in an hour that would probably take me a week and a half. I mean, there's just people that are good at it. So when you start investing in capital, think about your people capital. Think about your organizational capital that you invest in, and find the right team that's beyond just the technical experts that's going to get you there. Because I promise you, it's going to save you time and frustration if you find that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Workforce development is one of the most important things that we do, especially in kind of a nascent and growing industry. It's not like there's a ton of nuclear fusion magnet winding experts out there in the world. And so we have to pull comps from other industries. And I think the other thing that's really important to always consider is don't just hire PhDs. I know from experience, especially when we were small, doctor was the first common first name at our company. Yeah, but you can't be, because when you're building these factories, it takes electricians and plumbers and steel workers, welders to actually make equipment that makes these things go, and that is really those are the types of roles and jobs that actually accelerate your first of a kind factory, and could tell you when you're running into a mistake with a vendor, because they've lived it and done it, and we lived this. We made some of those early mistakes. And have kind of gotten our way through to operations now. But that's definitely the thing that I would advocate for the strongest, is negotiate hard with your vendors. Just because you're a small company, you could still be a huge order to them, and you are important, and you shouldn't take bad terms because you're a small company. And make sure that you have not just your PhDs reviewing those contracts, but the actual people who are going to be installing tools and operating them, so that you know that you're getting exactly what you pay for.
So much to unpack there. But I actually want to make sure also that this discussion is relevant to the audience. So if any of you guys have a question that comes up while we are talking, just please raise your hand and we can just make this more of a Q&A session than anything else. Oh yeah. How about okay, before we get to your question, let's poll, I guess, to just gauge who all is manufacturing something or needs manufacturing expertise. Okay. Who all has is 1 degree away from that, maybe is an investor, has some sort of touch point there. Okay.
Who's the solutions provider for that besides us?
Any solutions providers for manufacturing?
Come on, man.
That's a surprise.
Kind of 1.5. Yeah. Okay. 2. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Question.
Yes, hi. My name is Olu Ajala. I'm Sashipa Electric.
This guy is a super
Price is right. Hi, everybody. My name is Olu Ajala, Ashipa Electric. I have a question for regarding the superconductors.
Yeah.
Two parts of the question. The first one, you mentioned that 250x the current carrying capacity of copper. What is the price difference?
Yeah. So
And that's one. That's one. The other one is, can you speak about the application of your superconductor cables in maglev technology? Thanks.
Yeah, great questions. So this is HTS. It is 12 millimeters wide and about 100 microns thick, about the thickness of a piece of hair. So when I say 250 times the current carrying capacity of copper, that's on a cross-sectional area basis. So you think about copper carrying 250 amps, you'd need tiny piece of this. And so, yes, current density, exactly. So right now, I'm going to be careful because I meant what I said, that customers are the most important thing. And I've got a customer in the room. I brought one. But you can think of, on a material basis, the material being, between 2 and 3 times more expensive than copper wire. And I'm going to throw a unit that nobody else is familiar with here at you. But we think about it in dollars. Like you would think about copper in dollars per meter in the grid. We think about dollars per kiloamp meter, how many amps you can put through a meter of the material. And so that's how we do our comps to copper wire. The wire is used in the magnets that are used to propel maglev trains over in Asia. We are very bad at rail here in the United States, and so we have none of that and no plans for that, and it is a bummer. If anybody here is a rail developer, would love to talk to you about how efficient travel is in other parts of the world, but that is definitely I would say a smaller, more niche customer base that we have. There are a couple manufacturers, competitors of ours who are over in Asia who have a lot of that market share at the moment. Great question, though.
I'll throw it at you because you know tennis.
I can speak loud.
No, I got it.
So just question. So if you have a business that's, let's say, early stages outperforming small business that's outperforming some major competitors, what is the best way, in a nice way, to approach those competitors for a potential partnership or a licensing deal or something like this?
That's a great question. And I am in one of the most competitive industries, which is steel production, right? One thing I didn't mention in the intro is that Hertha Metals is a technology enabled iron and steel producer. We don't license our technology. And so we're approaching the market with a solution that reduces cost in steel. Steel, a matter of national security, a matter of economic prowess. There's, of course, a lot of motivation to crush us. And so the way that we are avoiding this or going around it is by telling them, instead of us going up against you and taking your market share, which now you see our economics, you know we will partner with you and we will co-integrate into your brownfield mill. And when you do that, you need to figure out what are the values you're providing to each other. So for ours, for example, we're not only giving them a lower cost, the margins of the whole product are now going to be greater. And our model is a profit sharing, right? And so we both get to now leverage that increase in margin. And what are they providing to me? Steel is incredibly capital intensive. There's a ton of downstream equipment that's separate from what we do that we can leverage. And so now, instead of me having to go raise $5 billion for our first plant, it's, $1 billion. Don't get scared of that. $1 billion by being able to integrate and leverage that downstream. So providing some value to them that's very clear, and then you getting value back. And now eventually, if you want to go up against them, you can, right? But at least you're now in the market.
And seeing as I know your business, what you have to be careful of, they will try to squash you. They will try to steal your vendors. They will try to figure out ways to talk to the customer and say your bit's bad, et cetera. Everyone does it, right? So many examples in the automotive industry of great technologies that either got bought or squashed by the big giants because it went against what their profit margins were. I think one of the ways you can actually work this is if you convince the customers that this is a great technology, then they put pressure on the big providers to
Pull them through.
they shut me off. but it actually they put pressure on companies such as mine, Halliburton, to say, hey, use this technology. Why aren't you talking to them? Why aren't you working with them? And I'll be honest with you, it happens between us and our competitors, Schlumberger and Baker. We get on rigs where the customers tell us, I want you to work with Schlumberger's technology and your technology here, and I want you guys to work together. And so I think that the biggest pull you're going to have is convince the customers that this is a value add solution, and make the customers convince the people that you're trying to talk to that they want to talk to you and they want to partner with you and they want to work with you. Because otherwise they get 1,000 people a day coming to their door saying they got a great technology. Why am I going to listen to you? And you have actually some really good contacts in your company that can open those doors. I know one of them for sure. Kevin, he's a great guy. Yeah. But even then, there has to be a reason. What's in it for me has to be solved for that company to want to work with you.
Yeah, two of my engineers actually combined like 65 years at Halliburton.
Echoing him, what I also left out was that we also bring that downstream customer into the loop. So we talk directly to the downstream customer that we know they're getting their steel from this supplier, and then we go talk to the supplier about partnering and have the downstream customer also pull us through that.
I'd also add, think through what you can do strategically with the customers that your competitors can't because they're large and it takes them forever to get approvals on things. Like demo things with them quickly, get early feedback from them. Like there are edges to being a small company that can move fast as well that the big guys don't necessarily have. Try to figure out what those things are, what data is most useful to you from them, and get that because, and this probably goes for all of us, right? The best thing for any of our customers is for what we make to become even further commoditized. It doesn't matter where you are in the commodity cycle, right? They want low prices and high reliability. They want to plug and play from different suppliers. What do you guys provide beyond just that commodity? Is it partnership and joint development and new products? Is it, some other edge that makes you worth working with?
I'm curious, just it's interesting to me that you guys have all been talking about know your customer demand. And at the same time, your customers are all extremely different. Like you're making a very specialty product that's selling into a growing market. You're making a what is essentially a commodity product selling into a very large incumbent market. And so curious as to if we can dive deeper into what differences there are between knowing your customer between those two, or if it's all the same. Because I think in my mind, there's a level of just like special service and made to order sort of manufacturing that you can do with your customers perhaps, but that you can't do with your product. So have you had to navigate that at all, like making an even higher grade of steel for this particular customer, like making it into a specialty product almost for you, that and then thinking about how that expands as you grow market?
I mean, you're spot on. We have different steel products that our customers are interested in, right? As I said, we're engaged with automotive space for automotive steel. We're engaged with transformer OEMs for electrical steel. We're engaged with just steel trading companies, which are interested in us making commodity-based HRC. And so there is a lot of differences and a lot of paths that you can take. One thing that's interesting, though, is that in steel, there's a market, obviously. You know that if you make steel at a lower cost and try to sell it, you will sell it. You'll sell it out. It'll be sold on spot pricing. The challenge comes when you try to marry that kind of business and industry, with venture capital, where they're demanding that, you need a very clear path. You need to know exactly what product you're going to make at that scale. What's it going to look like? What will be, the operations when, like I said, if you build it, they will actually come for steel. And so that's been really interesting to navigate. We're lucky that we have investors that understand the steel industry. And so there's a combination of, you have these early partnerships. We're going to make steel trial materials of different alloys from this next plant, but also very focused on what's our value. Our value is that the ore to liquid steel is where we achieve cost reductions by being able to use low grade ores, different factors. That value doesn't change whether I make an electrical steel or an HRC. That cost reduction is still there. So there's a pro and a con of having that flexibility. I can make any steel grade and my margins are going to look the same. Pro is you're flexible. Con is the universe is too wide. And I wish I had better advice. We're still trying to navigate. How do you just, pick a lane?
My advice is going to be an analogy from another industry, especially when you're in the beginning. Like, be New Balance, not Nike. Like, make 3 SKUs, not 30. You can get yourselves very distracted by every customer's individual specs. If you start to take every single note from every single customer and try to make them all at once, this is going to be incredibly distracting. And so we've boiled it down to magnet wire and cable wire. Like, what are the differences in the application? You kind of heard Lorene say this as well. She talked about the different applications, electrical steel, automotive steel. Like, that's a much more structured way to think about how to demo your new equipment that you're about to get, and ways to kind of avoid falling into trying really, really hard to hit some spec. And then the customer comes back 6 months later and says, hey, the spec changed. Not great use of our time. So
I'm living the nightmare of hitting spec right now. So
I would love to dive more into like how you marry that with investor expectations, because William, it's something you talked about too, which is like, don't bring on an investor that doesn't understand your business and has different expectations for what your production line looks like than what you can possibly achieve or what your customer even expects. So I'm curious to hear a little bit more about like how you guys have managed to raise capital alongside a growing manufacturing line, and also balancing investor expectations with customer expectations. Like, has that been different in your past experience, and how have you solved to that problem?
You want to go first? The first thing that I would say is we encouraged investors that were interested in giving us money to actually speak to our customers as part of their diligence process to make sure they understood this is the application, this is how much material is going to be needed, this is why the plants need to be sized the way that they are. And I think that not hearing that directly from the management team, but from the customers' mouths themselves was definitely helpful. And then I think the other thing is the types of investors that are investing in these first of a kind factories, like, need to realize how capital intensive this is. This is, $1 million and a Nobel Prize is not building a factory, right? It's going to take a lot more than that. And so it's nice
Have
to
you tried selling the Nobel Prize?
No, it's not mine. But that's kind of we're joking about here, is that it takes a lot more than just the PowerPoint project. It's really clear sources and uses. I'm buying these 6 tools. There are these 6 steps of the manufacturing process. Without this one, it sacrifices X. Like, being really crystal clear on exactly what they're getting so that they can do an ROI assessment of the markets that you're unlocking with that equipment and that plant.
I don't get investors.
Okay. So I'll give the cold, harsh truth, which is that you will shrink the pool of investors that want to come to the table by maintaining focus. Without a doubt, I see other startups in my space raising so much money, but also doing it by being distracted and just, I'll get the LOI for this thing, and then I'll get an offtake for that thing. And then, oh my God, now all the investors want to come in. But you're not really going to make it into the industry that you founded the company to make it into, right? With the decisions they're making. But those are short-term decisions for funding that successfully do secure your funding, but they do not at all secure your long-term success, and in fact do worse for it. And so we don't go that route. If you're not interested in where we're going and what is an unknown and what's a known, it's not a fit. And so that does close the investor pool, but makes it such that those investors on board are so on board. They have such high conviction in what you're doing. They will follow on each time, and eventually you'll get the capital together to get through. So it's not the easy path.
Yeah, and I would just add that's somewhat of what we're trying to do at Note too, is stakeholder education. Like, I think the investor community right now is in a learning period around first of a kind, and presenting them with precedent case studies and also access to channels where they can talk to potential customers, understand what past projects have looked like. I think that's also part of the process of getting them warmer to the fact that their idea of how to build this company may not be the correct one. William, anything to add on that front?
Not from the investor. I think these two have way more qualifications to talk to that. I mean, I do talk to investors. They ask me questions about the companies we work with, but they really just want to know how much confidence do we have from our experience that this plan is actually an executable plan. That's what we have to answer, right? And so we don't ever try to say anything bad about our companies, but I'm very honest with the companies that hire us that if they ask me to speak to an investor, I'm going to be truthful. And I'm going to tell them the exact same thing I'm telling them. So do you really want me talking to them? And in most cases, the answer is yes, because I believe in their plan. But that's one thing to talk about. The other one that I want to bring up, and I don't know how much time we have left. Do we have a couple minutes?
I don't even know how much.
Okay. And I don't want to be the negative in the room, but I'm going to be completely frank and honest with y'all. You can do everything 100% right. You can have the right investors. You can have the customers you think are lined up, and you can still fail. There are a lot of things out of your control that you're still relying on. And so what you have to be careful with is it's not what your first plan is, it's how do you pivot. If you don't have a pivot plan, you're going to fail no matter what, because it's like Mike Tyson used to say, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. You're going to get punched in the face, and you're going to get punched in the face often. And so what we try to talk to our companies about is you can't have a plan for everything, But it doesn't matter how good you are or how well you did things or how much planning you did, something's going to go wrong. It happens to us every day. The only reason why Halliburton made it through the pandemic is because we had pivot plans every time something went wrong with our commodity pricing, with our vendors, with our suppliers, with the countries that were shutting down. We had plans in place, or we at least had the ability to pivot on our feet and react to it. So don't feel bad when something goes wrong. Don't use it as a you did something wrong. Use it as a, okay, how can I pivot this into a success, learn from it, or just take my punch, take my bruise, let it heal, but then go ahead and continue progressing. And that's what we tell people, because it happens to us every day. We talk about how you can talk to vendors and suppliers and get them to respond. The biggest problem you guys have, right? No damn vendor wants to talk to you startups, right? There's a lot of reasons for that, but that our key is even as Halliburton, and even with as much money as we spend, we can reach out to 10 vendors and we may only get 3 responses. There are just bad vendors out there, guys. There are just crappy suppliers out in the world. Deal with it. Don't let it get you down. Don't think you did something wrong when it happened. Figure out how you approached them. Figure out what your next step is. And that's just the thing I like to say, and we tell our startups is, you got to know when to adjust. You got to be able to just throw failures to the side and learn from them. You can't dwell on them so much that it makes you disappointed or afraid to act in the future. That's just never going to work. And so, I mean, it's just the honest truth. You're going to have failures. You got to learn from it.
I guess any other questions from the audience? If not, I wanted to end by asking each of you guys to describe, I guess, one scrappy thing you did in sort of building lean, because I always find those stories extremely inspirational. And I know I've heard ones out there where, founders are out using secondhand equipment or third-hand or fourth-hand equipment, building in an old building that's like, basically an abandoned warehouse, things like that. But I know you guys have those stories, so I would love to hear those.
Oh boy, do I have them. We built our plant, total installed cost, commission, et cetera, for $5.5 million, which is insane for the scale of the plant that we have. And the number of embarrassing stories that come from that budget are immense. One that we have in steel, in case you have a leak from the furnace, you do not want that to land on concrete. There's moisture in the ground. And so upon coming into contact with this metal that's at 1600 degrees Celsius, it's going to instantly vaporize, pop, explode. And so you put sand instead in this pit, and the sand can't be wet, right? Well, we couldn't afford importing dry sand from, Hawaii. And so we had to just get sand that was, down the road in Conroe, and it was all wet. And so my team and I are shoveling at least 10 tons of sand onto the ground and walking around with a leaf blower. Second one, which is also insane, when I designed and raised the capital for this plant, I hadn't built one of this scale before, and I had no idea pipe fitters are expensive. I also had no idea it's so difficult to put pipes up, but it is. And we didn't have the budget left over at that time. So we had to do it ourselves. And it's 40 pieces of massive pipe. This is pipes that are 6 to 8 inch in diameter, 10 feet in length. And the only way we did it was by strings hanging over our platform for every section, and then piece by piece figuring it out. Oh God, it was a nightmare. But it worked. We got it.
Yeah, I think from our side, you'd be surprised at how adaptable your employees can be and what they'll do. We have a couple of production technicians who are in charge of operating equipment, and we had this big urgent delivery that we needed to make to a customer for samples, and all of a sudden our production technicians, they were able to be there overnight, and they became chemical vapor deposition scientists in a week. And these are roles that you would normally hire, people with a lot of years of experience in the semiconductor industry
Those
for.
Annoying
Yeah.
PhDs.
Yeah. And it turned out that actually the people who were operating the equipment were better to be supervising the manufacturing process in the first place. And so you get people from backgrounds that you maybe wouldn't expect, who have been observing things going on and actually turn out to help in those situations. I think that helps us stay small. And then I think the other thing is just leaning in and figuring out, okay, the BD team knows all the customer specs. Our desks are going to be in the quality lab, so that we're sitting there with the quality technician saying, are you testing the material like this right now? That's actually not what they do. We know what they do because we've been to their factories. Like those types of things are they're desk changes, right? They're not business transformational things, but they make a big impact in the final product in the end.
I want to make a comment because you basically said that some of your operators are the ones that figured this out. One of the amazing things about Houston is that we do have so much operational talent. It's the same story for me. The only reason why we were able to get those pipes hung is because my operators from the oil and gas industry figured they can do it and they did it. And so that is really a big advantage in being in Houston. You have all of this hands-on talent versus, if you're in Boston, very hard to know how to get scrappy and hands-on if, you've been studying in a library for 10 years. Which I did. I can say it because I did that.
I'll take it from a different angle. Impressive. We would never allow that at our facility, unfortunately, but I love it. I think the one thing we always tell you is no matter how big you are, no matter how much you think you know everything, ask for help. When Halliburton gets in a bind, we don't beat up our vendors. We don't beat up our suppliers. We build a collaborative relationship. We ask them for help. We ask them, what are solutions you can provide for us? What are ways we can get this done? So if we forget to order something, happens every day, Nick, every day. Someone forgets to order something in Halliburton and it's a 6-month backlog. And instead of telling our customers it's going to be 6 months delayed, they're not going to get their tool, which millions of dollars a day on a rig that you lose if you hit that. We ask our vendor, what are the alternatives? Do you have used equipment? Do you have a customer that has it that isn't using it? Do you have an order that's been put on hold that maybe we can take that one and then backfill it with our order, things like that? And you'll be surprised that if you actually rely on your vendors to help you be part of the solution, that they will come up with some really crafty stuff and they'll go out of the way to start helping you. Sometimes you might have to pay a premium, you will, to accelerate, but it's what we always say, rely on the experts. If you build a really, really good relationship, not only with your customers, with your suppliers, your vendors, your competitors. I'm not gonna lie to you. Sometimes we borrow stuff from our competitors and vice versa, right? It's if you build those relationships, then you have more people to turn to if you need help. And Lorraine, if she didn't have those operators on her team, but she had built the relationship, she could have asked some of her colleagues or other companies, say, hey, do you have anybody who could do this? They would lend them to them and they'd say, hey, for 3 days, I'll send you so-and-so and they'll see if they can help you solve it. That happens, guys. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to utilize the expertise and don't be afraid to reach out if things like that occur because the industry is not that big bad wolf like everyone says it is. There are bad people. There are times where crap happens badly, but in most instances, there are good people out there that want to help regardless of what entity or interest they have in your company. So ask for it.
Awesome. So it comes down to people ultimately. Thank you guys so much. That was so fun. And thank you to Energy Tech Cypher for hosting us. We hope you guys learned something. Thanks.